Do you believe in miracles? I mean, I think we all would like to, especially at a time like this. I don't know about you, but I could use a miracle right now. But I do believe in miracles. I really do. I believe that they're real. I also believe that we often miss them, that they're much more common than we realize, that there are miracles that are taking place that we overlook all the time. For example, 2 weeks ago on a Sunday morning, Diane and I were here, and we were talking to people after all the services, and pretty soon we found ourselves, just the two of us, standing here in the sanctuary at Riverbend Church, and the place was empty. Now, for us, that's a minor miracle, because typically every Sunday, we have plans with family or friends. After church, we're going out there. It's a long day, but we found ourselves just standing here with no plans. So my wife said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'm hungry. I haven't eaten since Friday, so I'm really hungry." She said, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Let's go get sushi." And so we went up to the Arboretum, and we went to a place that I like called Haru Sushi, and I got a big plate of sushi. Now you may say, eating sushi is not a miracle. You don't know this guy. I mean, I'm a carnivore. I am a committed carnivore. I'm a farm boy. All the animals on the farm we raised because they were delicious. We raised animals, we grew what we ate, and my palate growing up was meat and potatoes, both French fried and baked. And so that was about the extent of my palate. I mean, I ate buttered noodles growing up. That was considered exotic. I mean, we considered ketchup a spice. I ate meat and potatoes my whole life. Let's say my palate was very limited. And when someone suggested, "Hey, you should try sushi," I'm like, "Yeah, and I should try walking out into the field and taking a bite out of a cow. Raw fish?" That didn't make sense to me. I never imagined that I would ever eat sushi voluntarily, on purpose, and like it. But I did, and there was one person there who knew what was going on was miraculous. It was my wife, Diane. She said, "Can you believe?" Because she knew me pre-sushi. And she was watching me enjoy this, and she knew in that moment that a miracle was taking place. Now, it'd be reasonable for you to say, "Hold on, Dave, stop, time out. You are diluting the whole idea of miracles. The whole notion of a miracle is not a guy eating sushi in the Arboretum. That is not a miracle." Well, I would say maybe it's because we don't really understand the nature of the miraculous. You see, I believe there are two types of miracles. There's what I call the empirical miracles, the Class A, Level 1, miracles of science, miracles of physics, miracles that transcend the laws of the universe. These are Class A, Level 1 miracles. It's the stuff that the Bible is full of. Noah in the ark, Jonah in the whale, the walls of Jericho falling down, the parting of the Red Sea. These are Class A, big-time, pyrotechnic miracles where God transcends the laws of nature. Jesus was characterized by these miracles. He validated who he was by doing these things that defied physics, walking on the water, calming the sea, feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He made the deaf to hear and the blind to see and the lame to walk, and he contradicted the laws of nature. And the skeptics among us, the empiricists among us will go, "Oh, well, I have a hard time believing this." But for those of us who believe that there is a God who is the author of all things, miracles are no big deal. These Class A miracles are part of God's prerogative, his house, his rules. If he wants to do something that doesn't conform to the laws that God created, it's a prerogative of God. Don't have a problem with Class A miracles. Where we're headed now in just a few weeks is to the celebration of the greatest miracle in human history, the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth from the dead, where the law that governs all things in the entire universe, the law of death, was superseded by his evacuation of the grave, by his raising from the dead. This was the history-changing watershed miracle, the sine qua non of human history. And we are celebrating that, and we are walking our way to that celebration in just a few weeks. But on the way there are miracles before the miracle. I want to spend a few weeks looking at what I call the Class B miracles. And they occurred on the way to sort of the precursor to the miracle of the resurrection of Jesus. It's the story of the resurrection of Lazarus of Bethany. And on the way to that story, there are miracles before the miracle, Class B miracles. Class B sort of level 2 metaphysical miracles that happen all the time. And we need to remember that these are miraculous things. The miracle of love, the miracle of forgiveness, the miracle of grace, the miracle of second chances, the miracles that don't defy the laws of physics because they are inexplicable, because they don't conform to anything, but they're no less miraculous. What I want to do is I want to look at those miracles, and I want to look at one miracle today in particular. And it's the miracle of a transformed heart. And the path to that miracle is unusual because it is the path through unanswered prayer. But before we talk about that, I'd like to pray for a moment. Would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight. That you would use your words spoken by your servant, anointed by your Spirit, to transcend the boundaries of our physical location and to be useful even beyond what we can ask or think. Pray that we would enter into your presence and experience the miracle of your grace. May we be transformed as we consider these things. Pray this for myself, for my family, and for anyone who is here with us in this moment. For I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. The story in John chapter 11, the story of the raising of Lazarus from the dead, is a Class A miracle. It is full of pyrotechnics. He had been dead 3 days, and Jesus raised him from the dead. And this is one of those miracles where if you are a skeptic or a cynic, you say, I'm not sure how this could have happened. But if you believe Jesus is who he said he was, you look at it and go, well, yeah, he could do that. The story is told for us in the Gospel of John in what we have as the 11th chapter, and it starts ominously enough. The first sentence of the John chapter 11 is that there was a man named Lazarus, and he was from the village of Bethany. Bethany was about 2 miles down the road to Jericho, outside of Jerusalem. And it says that he was sick. It tells us that he had 2 sisters. One was named Martha and one was named Mary. And John goes on to tell us that Mary is the woman who will eventually, in just a few days, break a jar, an alabaster jar of fine perfume on the feet of Jesus and wipe it with her hair. That's the Mary who is the sister of Lazarus. And they sent Lazarus a message. And they sent him a message and they said, Lord, the one you love is sick. I don't know about you, but that is an emphatic message. The one you love. Remember your pal, your buddy, your friend, the guy you care about. We know you care about him. Lazarus is sick. And I believe what John is doing here is he's pulling back the curtains of heaven. And he's inviting us into the corridors of the presence of God. And we hear what a prayer sounds like to God. The plea. Lord, you love this guy. This is one of the good guys. This is one of your friends. And I think we all understand that, don't we? This is how I operate. How I operate is when I have a need, I call my friends. I call my friends, and I've been blessed with a catalog of friends who have influence, who have abilities, who have resources. I remember having a need that I needed some police help, so I called the chief of police. I remember when there was a political issue, I had lunch with the mayor. When I had a medical need, I called one of the finest thoracic surgeons in the nation, and he took care of me because he was a friend of mine. When I'm stuck in a legal problem or I need some legal counsel, I can call a friend who's one of the finest litigators in the nation. Because that's what we do, isn't it? It's what we do. It's part of friendship. It's part of that agreement that says, because we're friends, because we have this relationship, I will do what I can for you. I have resources, I have abilities, I have strengths that you don't have. And because I know I have been blessed with friends of great influence and great resources, because of my friendship, I've been given access. I've been behind the ropes. I've been behind the curtain. I've been in the green rooms of television shows and on major motion picture movie sets. I've been at Hollywood premieres, and I've been in the pits at NASCAR. That's knowing somebody right there. That is redneck royalty right there. But these are because these are my friends, and this is what they were saying. Your friend, the one you love, Lazarus, is sick, and that comes with an expectation. I need your help. Because he's your friend, you're going to pay special attention to this need because he's the one you love. It's interesting how Jesus responds to this. In verse 4, he says, I will prophesy about this, that this will not end in death, even though I believe in that moment Lazarus was already dead. He said, this will not end in death. And John makes a note. He says, yes, Jesus did love Martha and Mary and Lazarus. He did. He loved them, verse 5. He loved them for sure, but he says to those who are gathered there, and the messenger that brought them the message from Bethany, he says, this will not end in death. It is for God's glory, so God will be glorified. And he gives them a promise. But then he breaks that promise. Because it doesn't sound much like a promise when he gets to verse 6. Because in verse 6, it says, when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. You want to know what unanswered prayer sounds like in heaven? It sounds like this. It sounds like Jesus saying, this will not end this way. This will end for God's glory. Now I'm going to do nothing. And he waited where he was 2 more days. You know how I show my love for you? I show my love for you by telling you no. Not now. I answer your prayer by saying, no, I will not intervene. 2 days later, he comes out and he says, okay, guys, and I like to imagine they were probably going on with their business. The disciples had probably forgotten that 2 days earlier they had gotten a message about Lazarus being sick. They didn't know he had died. But sometime in those 2 days, Jesus was probably eating or probably in the middle, and he went, oh, time to go. And they went, what do you mean time to go? Well, we're going to go to Judea. When he said they were going to go to Judea, that's not like a state. He meant we're going to go to the heart of Israel. We're going to go to Jerusalem. And they're like, whoa, hold on there, Rabbi. We can't go to Jerusalem. Last time you were there, they tried to beat you to death with stones. Are you not paying attention? You want to go back there? And then Jesus says something really, really bizarre in verse 9. He said, let me tell you something. You know that there are 12 hours of daylight, right? And when you walk in the daylight, you don't stumble because you have the light. But the person who walks at night, well, they stumble because they have no light. And I'm sure they scratch their heads like we do, and it's like, okay, what does this have to do with anything? But Jesus was telling them this. He was telling them, you think you know what I'm doing, but you don't. When you trust in me, you walk in the light. But when you withdraw from me, you stumble because you walk in the darkness. Because he was referencing what John quoted, that I am the light of the world. He's speaking in code to them. He's telling them, you think you know who I am. You're telling me, I know who you are, and I'm telling you, you don't know who I am. You may think you know who I am, but I know who I really am. One of my good friends, and I call him a good friend because I'm blessed to have him as a friend, and he and his family are a regular part of our Riverbank community. And if I were to tell you his name, you would all recognize him, and he enjoys sort of that anonymity, so he shall remain nameless. But a couple of years ago, this friend of mine called me and he said, hey, do you want to have lunch? I'm like, sure. And he said, well, where do you want to go? And I thought about it for a second, and I said, there's this new barbecue place over on the east side. It's called La Barbecue. And it's gotten these rave reviews, and we should go there. And we should go there for lunch. And he's like, sure, I'll pick you up. And he picks me up. And we're driving over there, and I'm thinking, this is going to be great. Because La Barbecue, even right after it opened, started having these enormous crowds. If you've been there 2 years ago when it was brand new, there was like an hour wait to get to lunch. And I thought, I'm riding with the golden ticket. I ain't waiting in no line. I'm not hanging with the unwashed masses. Come on, I got the free pass to the front of the line. I'm not with Obama, but I'm with the next best thing. And so we're cutting the line at La Barbecue, and we drive up and we park, and sure enough, it's over in East Austin. It was in this sort of treed parking lot, and there's a line. It's got to be 30, 40 people in that line. And so I start walking past the line toward the window. And he goes the other way to the end of the line. And I'm kind of like, come on, do you know who you are? And he goes, come over here. And so we stand in line for 45 minutes. And during those 45 minutes, people are coming up to him, and what he loves about living in Austin, what he loves about Riverbend Church, just in case you don't understand how this works. Because when we went there, I thought, this is going to be all right. But when we got there, he said, no. And people were like, hey, it's good to see you. We get to the window of the trailer, 45 minutes in line. And the person in the window can't talk. They're like, I'm like, we'd like some barbecue. And the person says, why didn't you just come to the window? And I go, golden ticket. And we order our barbecue and we sit down, and I say to him, do you know who you are? And I said, we could have cut the line. People could, you can do that. And he said, that would be a jerk move. And he didn't say jerk. He said something a little more profane. But he was saying to me, what he was saying to me, when I was saying, do you know who you are? He was saying, I know who I am. Do you know who I am? I know who I am. Do you know who I am? And this is what Jesus was saying when he was talking to his disciples, when he was making his way to Jerusalem. The story goes on, and he tells the story then to his disciples. He says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and we're going to go and we're going to wake him up. And so the disciples thought, okay, well, if we're going and we're going to wake him up, then he's just asleep. And Jesus says, no. We're not going to go wake him up. He says plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad, and this is where John pulls the curtain back on the corridors of heaven. And here's the thoughts of God when our prayers are unanswered. And he said, I was glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. Because I know who I am. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? And the reason that your prayers went unanswered, because you thought you knew who I am, but you need to know who I really am. Let us go to him. Have your prayers ever been unanswered? You ever had unanswered prayers? I think we all have. Let me put it to you another way. Have you ever had to say no to your children? If you're not a parent yet, did your parents ever say no to you? Well, if you're a decent parent, or if you had decent parents, you probably got told, like me, no a lot. And I wish I could tell you that every time I said no to my children, it was in their best interest. But I'm a wreck of a human being. And there were times when they would say, Daddy, Daddy, read to us. And my brain was not there. My heart was not in it. I didn't have the emotional bandwidth. Or they'd say, Daddy, can we do this? And we didn't have the money. We didn't have the resources. Or, Daddy, come play with me. And I didn't have the time. And so some of the time I said no to them because I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the ability to say yes. And sometimes I just said no to them because I was protecting myself, because I was being selfish, because whether or not I like to admit it, I'm over you right now. I can't deal with your little children-ness. I got enough stuff of grown-up stuff, and I can't deal with you right now. And I'm ashamed to admit it, but a lot of times when I said no to my children, it was not in their best interest. But when I was on my game, when you're a great parent, you say no to your children to protect them. You say no to your children to teach them. You say no to your children because you know what is in their best interest. And God has no such deficiencies. God lacks no resource or no time or no affection for us. God is not limited like we are, so that every time God says no, it is for our sake, in our best interest. That's what Jesus was teaching them, and he was trying to show them that the greatest miracle that can happen in our life is for me to change your mind about who I am. You think you know who I am. Do you know who I am? I know who I am. The story ends here. This part of the story ends with Thomas saying, well, I guess if Lazarus is dead, and we're going to go to Jerusalem, and they're going to kill Jesus, I guess we're all dead. So let's just go there and face whatever we're going to face. And he still didn't get it. I did all this so that you could understand who I am and what I'm doing, so that you could trust me when you don't understand. And he didn't. And it's interesting how John phrases it. He said, Thomas, also known as Didymus. Didymus is the Greek word for twin. It means twin. You know who Didymus's twin is? Us. Because you know who Thomas is? He's later to be identified as Doubting Thomas. You know who his twin is? It's Doubting Dave. It's doubting us. And he says, I'm doing this so that you can know who I am. I believe there's miracles in our lives all the time. They're taking place all the time. And the greatest miracle that we overlook is the miracle of a change of heart. It is the miracle of a transformed spirit. Because it's hard. It's hard for us to change our minds. It's easy for us to learn new things. I think it is. I think it's easy for us to learn new things because when we learn new things, we don't have to unlearn something. We can just say, "Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's good." But when our mind is changed, When our heart is transformed, we have to let go of something. We have to admit that what I thought or what I believed or what I felt was incorrect, that I was wrong. And to unlearn something so that we might learn something new, that's a miracle. That is a Class B, full-on, change of heart, change your life miracle. And every time God doesn't answer our prayer according to our request, he's setting us up for that. Saying, get ready. I'm going to do a miracle in you right now. I'm going to change your life. I remember the miracle moment. I remember it. I remember the day. I remember the time. I remember the place. It was February the 10th, 2005. We have 3 daughters, Kaya, who's our oldest, and Leah, who's our middle, and Caitlin, who is our youngest. And Caitlin and Leah are 5 days away from being 2 years apart. So Caitlin's birthday is February 5th. Leah's birthday is February 10th. Isn't that right, dear? Are those right? I got it right. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And so you know what it's like. If you're born around Christmas or you're born another holiday, you kind of get smushed in. Like if you have a birthday around Christmas, you never get a real birthday. Well, when you have 2 daughters who are born 5 days apart, they live their life kind of with a shared celebration. And on February the 10th, it was a Friday, 2005, it was Leah's birthday. But I said to Caitlin, you can get a whole bunch of your friends, and Leah, you can get a whole bunch of your friends, and we'll go to any restaurant you want. Now, you have to understand the context of this request. At the beginning of 2005, Diane and I committed to fast and pray for 40 days. Let me say that again so you understand what was going on. We agreed, the 2 of us, to fast and pray for 40 days. We were trying to decide where God was leading us. By the way, he led us here. But the reality was, I hadn't eaten solid food in 40 days. I was ready to go into the field and bite a cow. So when my youngest daughter says, where I want to take us and all of our friends is a place called Naru Japanese Restaurant in Pleasanton, California, I'm like, do they have real food there? And she said, Dad, you're going to love it. And after not eating for 40 days, they put a plate of sushi in front of me. I said, what do you do with this? And they said, you eat it. So I did. And it was delicious. And I've eaten it ever since. And it was a miracle that took place at 7 o'clock on February the 10th, 2005, at Naru Japanese Restaurant in Pleasanton, California. My life was changed. And I'll eat sushi right in front of you to prove it. Because that's how God works, you see. Out of our difficulties, out of our struggles, out of that place, you moved my stool. I was like, what? That could have been catastrophic. And people would have been watching online. Who would have thought? It was a miracle that I didn't sit down. I don't mean to make light of that, because I really do believe in miracles. And I believe that they take place all around us in ways that we cannot even calculate. And one of the most spectacular miracles that goes unobserved is the transformation of a human heart. When we realize that who we think he is not who he really is. Do you know who he is? Because he knows who you are. And I believe in that miracle.